Uncanny X-Men. It'll take all of your mutant powers to defeat Magneto. And welcome to the Nostalgia Black Friday special. For an unlimited time only, we're bringing you the biggest savings in podcast history. Over 250 episodes of our show completely free. And as a special doorbuster, for our Patreon subscribers, they are getting this episode on Thanksgiving.
Red Thursday.
You too can save, not your money, but your time when you join our Patreon.
Patreon.com/nostalgia.
And get access to certain episodes hours earlier. So stampede over now and pay for your discount. And listen to this episode again on Cyber Monday for double the savings. And I'm Mike.
Can I speak to your manager?
That sounds like the perfect kind of Black Friday lingo to continue this conversation, Joe.
Thanks. That's me. I'm Joe.
Yeah, we're recording. I'm Sean.
There's no better way to get into an episode on Black Friday than to talk about all of the savings of your own time when you don't have to play the game anymore. You can just listen to our review of Uncanny X-Men on the NES.
I've been waiting all Thanksgiving for this. Like, I ate some food because my family made me. But now I'm here, and I'm ready to spend some cash.
Yeah, I mean, I hate when I have to work right after Thanksgiving on Black Friday, but here I am.
Joe, do you have any actual experience in retail on Black Friday?
I do. I used to work at Sears. Shout out to Sears and my old Sears crew. And I actually liked it. I loved working at Sears. I just made commission, and I loved working on Black Friday because I made commission. So it was usually a pretty fruitful day. How
old are you?
I know, right? You know, this was in the 40s.
I just don't.
But that's why I loved it. Listen, that's why I love it. Not to make this a Sears episode, but I mean, you get me going about Sears, and I'll go on. That's why I loved it, because in 2014 or whenever it was, 2013, when I was working there, nobody goes to Sears anymore.
Yeah.
So, and all my friends worked there, so we just hang out. There were no customers. And then we get like 1 or 2 customers a day. I sold appliances, so that was still enough commission to make more than I had made in other part-time jobs. And then I would just hang out with my friends the rest of the day with no customers. Plus, the fact that we made straight commission meant that they couldn't tell us to do anything else because we weren't getting paid to do any other tasks other than to sell. So it was great.
It's like you were a mutant who had mutant powers to sell appliances, to sell washing machines.
I'm an ex-employee. I'm an ex-salesman.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Ex-salesman.
The Uncanny X-salesman.
Yeah, it was uncanny that I worked at Sears.
Mike, I have a question about X-Men.
Sure. The price? You can get it for $12 on eBay.
No, this is actually a real question about nerdy things, but is Uncanny X-Men like the original like name of the property? Is it like a section of X-Mendom?
Yes, it's a section. It's a section of the X-Men. So the Uncanny X-Men thing is the original, like the very first issue of X-Men, the creation of the X-Men, if you will, did not have them be known as the Uncanny X-Men. It was just the X-Men.
So what makes what makes Uncanny X-Men different? Come on, you know this.
Yeah, well, no, so it's like weird because there's also like what's Giant Size X-Men too, because that's like also a very in-demand issue of the X-Men series, but it's like weird, like in the canon, is that a different run of X-Men? Like what's going on? Basically, they change the names of these things when like new characters are introduced, or so for instance, like the Uncanny X-Men, I believe started with like issue like maybe 67 or 94, one of those two. They started just referring to them as that instead, kind of like how, you know, the Spider-Man is the Amazing Spider-Man, but then there's also Web of Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man, right? It's like the difference is like the story, that there's kind of stories that they're telling and who the audience is for. But then like Giant Size X-Men was like an entire new idea of X-Men. Like that one had like now Wolverines with the X-Men and stuff like that instead of being like a Hulk villain.
And they're
So
all like
canonically-
7 feet tall.
In the
Canonically-
oh, I get you. Yeah, no. It's just giant sized because it was like 64 pages or something like that.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So canonically, Uncanny X-Men is not on some different universe than like what had come before it.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It's just they just kind of started branding it differently.
Yep, think of Uncanny X-Men no
Because-
different than New Mutants, which was another run of the X-Men that's just like it features different X-Men in it. But the X-Men, because it's trickier than Spider-Man, right? Spider-Man's one dude. He's whether it's spectacular or
Well.
amazing. Oh yeah. He's not always one dude, that's true. But for the most part, he was one dude throughout the history of things.
Yeah.
And then with the X-Men, it's like this isn't like the Fantastic Four because there's still always just 4 of them. The X-Men is like mutants in general are considered X-Men in this world, and so the number of X-Men I think at one point was really large, and then I think it was like over 600 or whatever, and then they did like a big comic book event like they do every year, and they did one where they just like killed like half or almost all of the mutants thanks to Wanda.
Oh, that's great.
The Scarlet Witch. Yeah.
Well, it's particularly confusing, the Uncanny thing, to me, because nowhere in this game that I could find does it say Uncanny X-Men.
That's true.
Even the title screen just says Marvel's X-Men.
Yeah, it's just on the box, I think.
Oh, yeah, I think it was in the manual. I didn't actually look at the box art.
But I feel like the Uncanny X-Men thing, like that's good branding, right? Like because that's what the comic book was probably being referred to around that same time. So it'd be like calling a game Spider-Man and not the Amazing Spider-Man. Like the most popular comic series for Spider-Man was and still is the Amazing Spider-Man.
That'd be a real amateur move.
Be like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
Is this game not uncanny?
I guess my point is that like what the PS4 Spider-Man, that's called Marvel's Spider-Man, correct? Then it would be like if the box said Marvel's Spider-Man, but then the title screen just said Spider-Man.
I'm looking at my box right now, and I think it just says Marvel Spider-Man, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's what the title screen says too, right?
True that.
So you have a branding issue right off the bat on the titles.
Bad game.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. That you're just not gonna let them walk away from that.
Yeah.
Kind of confusing though that they're called the X-Men at all, right? We've been saying X-Men, but even issue number 1 had Marvel Girl, who's not in this game, but she's a woman. I don't know, they tried to demean her and call her just a girl, but where's my X-Women representation? Why is it X-Men?
I feel like it's just more of a... It just sounds better as a word than like X-citizens.
X-people.
X-people,
Yeah,
X-citizens.
I mean, I'm assuming that the men was coming from like the sort of like dated version of men, which was referring to just like mankind.
Yeah,
which
like,
isn't really used
human
much anymore, but
X-Men. Maybe it's just like X-Men.
Well, it's interesting because comics of this time period, the early 60s, they had women superheroes like Marvel Girl and Miss Invisible on the Fantastic Four, but even Miss Invisible, like she's like still relegated to doing like the chores for the Fantastic Four as well. Like she's still responsible to like clean the headquarters, and they like talk about it. Storm wasn't in the original X-Men run, so I don't know if they ever were misogynistic towards her later on in the run, but
well, I'm sure, you know, law of averages.
Right. But Storm was not an original X-Men. The original X-Men, I think I could try to get them off the top of my head, but Cyclops, Angel, Marvel Girl, I feel like is it Iceman? What is that guy's name?
It's like an Iceman.
Iceman.
Yeah.
At least that's what it is in the game.
Yeah, and one other.
But who knows what it is on the cover?
No, it is Iceman. It is Iceman. Yeah.
I know.
And then one other that I can't remember, but people are gonna yell at me.
They're Nightcrawlers.
I'm just cheating. I'm looking at the issue. It's Beast.
Oh, you're talking about the comic.
Yeah,
not
the
video
original
game
run.
that we're
Yeah,
reviewing
sorry.
right now.
Right.
Okay.
We're still just talking about the comic, but if we want to move over to the game, that's fine.
I'm down to keep talking. I like to learn things.
Do you have a favorite X-Men?
I got more Sears stuff.
I think I'm pretty basic, and I'm a Wolverine fan. Maybe I'm just a Hugh Jackman fan though. Like I don't really know how much of Sony's X-Men, is it Sony? It's Sony, right? Whoever makes the X-Men movies. Fox, yeah, them. I don't know how much of Hugh Jackman for performance was inspired by the actual like Wolverine of the comics, but I like him.
I'm kind of not super familiar with most like X-Men stuff, so like most of my knowledge is from like maybe the one Fox movie that I saw, or the two Fox movies that I saw, and from anything in the MCU that's like starting to reference. So I don't have much to pull from. I mean, Wanda, I don't know.
I think Magneto has a pretty cool like reason to be evil. Like I think he's a pretty well-rounded villain.
That's true, yeah. And how much longer is the Magneto like villain thing gonna make sense? You know, like we're so far away from World War II now. He's just gonna have to be like really, really old if they want to keep that going.
Well, he could be frozen on ice or something, like Captain America.
That's a good idea. Let's do that.
Done. When I buy Disney.
I'm easy. I'm a fan of Cyclops. I just like the idea that he just wears, like, as a kid, I didn't even think it was a power. I thought it was just sunglasses that he wore that shot out those beams. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Anybody could be Cyclops. Like, Spider-Man, impossible for me. I'd have to be bit by a spider. Cyclops, I just put on some cool headgear.
But like that raises the question though, like of Cyclops pre-visor, like was like when he was born, did he have this power? Like, did he kill the doctor that delivered him and like things like that? Like, I don't know. I want to see that origin story. I'm sure it's answered
Cyclops
somewhere.
year one.
Give us the birth of Cyclops.
Yeah.
In the Uncanny X-Men video game, you do get to play as Cyclops, as well as, I think Sean was kind of rounding them out for me, but it's Wolverine, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Cyclops, Storm, and Iceman.
Yeah, sorry.
And you choose your X-Man superhero, and also choose an AI, or have a second player choose their superhero, to enter any stage of your choosing. So it's kind of like Mega Man, but not really. You enter a level, you clear the area of constantly spawning enemies in these levels, as you try to get closer and closer to the super villain at the end of the stage. All levels are played in this like top-down Zelda dungeon style, with you and your partner X-Man in the stage. I think the most interesting part of the X-Men are their unique powers. So, guys, how unique does each character feel?
Well, there's like the two powers, right?
What
in X-Men?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Yeah. Okay,
those who can punch, those who
can
punch, and those who can't.
Do they punch? Is that what they're doing? Like
you know, some like swipe at you like that. All the X-Men are either swipers or spewers, and so basically in the game there are two attacks. There's some of the X-Men can shoot a vaguely themed projectile at an enemy, or they can just sort of lunge and like presumably punch if they don't have lasers that come out of their eyes or ice cubes that are generated from their chest or something. And those are the weapons.
Yeah, and it kind of adds fires to that age-old debate of what's more powerful, a weapon that you can fire at someone from a distance out of harm's way, or not doing that.
Some would say that there's more honor in sort of just vaguely swiping at someone.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is, I did not see much of a reason to ever choose a character that didn't have a projectile weapon. But I'm not an honorable guy.
No, I get it. But like Wolverine, for instance, is an X-Man who would... X-Man, I'm making him like singular now. I don't know what the singular is. We're just going to roll with it and say that they're X-Men, even if they're talking about them singularly. So Wolverine would just attack with his claws. So in this game, they've made it so that whether it looks like he's attacking with his claws or not, it's melee combat for him. And Colossus would attack with his fist, I suppose. He's really strong. And so it looks like exactly the same thing, and basically the difference between playing Wolverine or Colossus, it means nothing. It's like style points for you, whether you like a certain character more.
Yeah, I mean, there are some vague stats.
He's
that,
probably
like,
faster.
make
Like
a
Wolverine's
difference,
probably
but-
faster.
Right. And we can talk about
Yeah, it's
how
hard to
much
see
those
the
things
difference.
mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
in the game. But Nightcrawler, who is also melee, he at least they like gave the teleportation thing where he can just walk through walls to simulate the idea of him teleporting. Like that actually feels like a step in the right direction of making a character feel unique, because it even comes at the expense of hit points. So, like I feel like there's got to be at least one thing that they could have done that only like Colossus can do to the environments. Like he could break the walls.
Yeah, or like
Yeah.
shake things or something.
Right.
or
But they
like-
didn't do
yeah.
that.
They didn't.
Yeah, or
That's
like
correct.
couldn't. I mean, isn't Wolverine's whole thing he like regenerates? Couldn't he just like slowly regain health? or
Right.
I think they
something? Or,
just
like,
gave him more health.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I like
I
your
guess that-
idea, Joe, just because, he
Yeah.
is immortal in that sense.
but I mean, right. But yeah, I actually didn't know about was it
Nightcrawler,
I didn't even know about his special power. I mean, I did try to play as everybody, but I must have just not realized that I could walk through walls when I played as him. I don't think I played as him for very long.
You were
compared to
just
some of the other
respecting
people.
the boundaries.
Right. I was like, I know what the developers wanted here. I don't want to
Yeah.
glitch.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what it looks like too, though, Joe. It's not. It doesn't have a cool effect. You just walk through the environment. It doesn't. It's just to pretend the idea of teleportation because they couldn't figure out how to let a character teleport in this game. Cyclops, Storm, and Iceman are the projectile people. However, Cyclops is the weakest of the batch because he can only do projectile combat. Storm and Iceman get the ability to fly, and I get it. Like, Iceman must be like flying via the snow that he's generating and riding like an avalanche or something.
Yeah.
But Storm, I don't know, like, that makes sense for her for sure to fly, and also she shoots like lightning bolts instead of the laser beams that Cyclops shoots out. And then
It kind of just looks like fire, but I mean, they describe it as lightning, so I'll take
right,
that.
we're being nice.
Yeah.
And that's how these characters feel. And Joe, you were saying like, the stats might be different and everything, but I don't know if it's just the amount of enemies in this game or whatever, but it didn't feel like the difference between Wolverine and Colossus meant anything through my a bit limited playtesting with them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I believe that the stats are different because they say they are. I don't believe it because I experienced any difference. Like I think that you all like you pick up health so frequently. There are just so many enemies. You kill them really pretty easily as anyone that you are. Apparently there are some speed differences, but you never really need to move that fast or anything. I mean, there's a couple times you got to like get through a sliding door quickly or something, but like I don't know if like your speed stat really contributes too much to that like one step you need to do. So yeah, like I'm sure that there is like some damage calculation happening where it's like your projectile is more powerful, but like most enemies die in like 1 or 2 hits anyways. So I don't know. I never really felt the difference between anything.
Yeah, I also there's speed, strength, I forget what the other two are, but one of them is willpower.
Power, endurance, speed, and willpower.
Yeah, I don't know what willpower is supposed to signify. If it has to do with like maybe you take less damage, then I don't know, maybe just give that person more HP. I don't know. Like do you guys know what willpower is?
I should, but I don't. And I remember actually making a mental note of like I gotta look that up. I did read through I mean, admittedly I wasn't like super thorough in reading the manual, but I don't remember seeing it even in the manual.
I think they just listed them. These are the 4 things.
Right, that's what I was gonna say, Sean, is like I'm not sold that, because yeah, you're right, Joe, they're not listed in the manual. I went back and even checked like game FAQs to see if like the guide on there says like what these hidden stats could mean. It's not even mentioned at all. So I wonder if this is like one of those Marvel.com things where people get really upset about this, where they give like a power scale to every Marvel character that's ever existed, and when you're ranking like 2,000 characters, you're bound to just have like erroneous errors where it's like, Spider-Man's power is a 7 and Hulk's is a 9. It's like, Spider-Man would get lit up by Hulk. Like 2 power points isn't even like that big of a difference. And those are made up. I'm just saying like there's many examples of stuff like that. I wonder if this is just for creative flair of like what their stats could be based on like, to give them some building without actually building it out into the gameplay.
I will state that I did feel a difference with speed. So at least speed, I feel that is a real thing. Those differences, but yeah, the one that the willpower, I don't even know what it means, so I don't know how to prove that.
Some players just give up. If they have low willpower, then the AI computers just stop.
It describes you.
Yeah. It's 2 players, always, because the X-Men are always a team, right? You can't just be one X. It's not the Wolverine game. We'll play that one.
Well, I think that they also don't know how to like singularize X-Men, so it just always makes sure there's 2
They
players
just dodged
on
that
screen, so
conversation. They didn't want to ask. They didn't want to ask Stan Lee at the time. They were like,
Right.
"Can we say
Yeah.
X-Man?" Like, probably not. No. But it brings up a good point of like, when you have a team idea. In modern games, there would be like some kind of like puzzle solving of like teaming up these 2 characters means that the gameplay is going to play different than if you were Storm and Nightcrawler, right? But instead, it's just kind of like you're tied down to this AI player if you don't have a friend, or you're tied down to your friend's choice too. But the AI one has the ability to like get stuck. And just end the game for you. Basically soft lock itself where it can't figure out how to move around the wall. And that's just a huge problem that, in my experience of playing this game, I ran into it in my first 15 minutes, so I can't imagine playtesters didn't notice that this could happen. And so you have to play like with Nightcrawler to really guarantee that won't happen, because at least he can teleport through the walls.
Oh, you know what? I didn't even think of that. But yeah, it seems like whatever they did with this AI model, like it's just way too rudimentary. And maybe if every screen was just a field of enemies with no obstacles, like maybe it would work then. Even though I've seen the AI completely glitch out and just start walking back and forth, shooting projectiles over and over, like many times, like within the first 30 seconds of playing. Maybe it would happen less, but they didn't want it to be a complete bore, so they made you have to walk around things, but their AI does not know how to do that. But yeah, I guess Nightcrawler fixes that.
Yeah, I mean, I was initially kind of like, before I played it, when I just kind of saw what was going to happen, a little impressed, because I couldn't remember, like, what other games have we played in the NES that had an AI companion?
No, I can't think of one.
Have we? Yeah, I feel like that was like, I was like a surprise that was happening, that was doable. Then it made sense once I booted it up and it just doesn't work. but at first I was like, wow, that's pretty ambitious for the NES.
And I don't know really anything about coding video games and stuff, but I know that like for enemies, it's usually a heat-seeking missile kind of thing, where it knows your placement and just the enemies behave a little bit randomly, but they also know where you are and try to like shoot at you or move towards you. In this game, you can see that happening, but because like walls are in the way, it's kind of funny that sometimes even enemies will act like really stupid and just like hug the side of a wall thinking that they're shooting their projectiles at you, but they just constantly repeat them into a wall ad infinitum until you come to them. But the AI does that too. So really it's like you're tagging along with it's like a rescue mission thing, where you just have to like hope that your AI character survives alongside you. I don't think you're penalized if they die though, like you can just play on without them, but that's hoping that they die and don't get stuck. If you can kill one type of enemy, you can kill them all. There's different sprites for enemies, but the idea is just attack the enemy or shoot a projectile at the enemy and then it dies. Nothing behaves differently in this game. It's just kind of like a smorgasbord of ideas of not even things that I recognize from the comics or anything. I'm not really sure. You could complain about the constantly respawning enemies. You could complain about the designs of the enemies. I think the most boring thing is just the behavior of the enemies and how you just have to kind of like deal with them is the worst part of this game. If they were fun to fight, that'd be a different story.
I'd say, yeah, the only difference, like there are different sprites, and those different sprites move slightly differently. And then you've got some that are different shapes, like you got little snakes that run around, but only their head is a hitbox, I think. So they may as well just be another like single square wide thing. And I guess like, yeah, I mean it's not like it's all just like palette swapped, but there really isn't any difference in terms of their strength or how hard they are to kill. It's pretty boring.
And I don't know if that comes down to just the repetitiveness of it doesn't matter like really which X-Men you are, because you can only either shoot your projectile or hit them. I don't know if that's what makes it boring, but I'm thinking about this game as like something where it doesn't really matter like what you might as well just dodge everything and keep moving forward to get to the boss, because these enemies, they're just like in your way. They're not really like causing much harm, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not even, for me, it's not even like moving forward. Like the moving forward part even. Like I kind of started doing what you're saying is like I kind of stopped paying too much attention to the enemies unless they were in my way or I needed health, which was an easy way to just get more health. But moving forward is even like not super clear. Like I feel like there's this aimlessness to the whole game as a whole, like in general, where I'm like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I guess I could go this way, and like, no, you can't. But there's no wall there. You can't go there. There's a wall here, but you can go through that one. Like, or you can go past this part. Like, I'm just like, I don't. It's not. It doesn't feel like a dungeon or a puzzle or a maze. It just feels like a mess.
Yeah, I wasn't sure for most of this game where I was supposed to go. And so then I thought, okay, maybe it's like you have to kill a certain amount of enemies, and it's sort of like you have to clear the stage. And then I ended up just doing that for a while. And then I ended up stepping on some kind of sprite that was supposed to be some kind of entrance or something. And I went somewhere else, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I'm making progress. And then I did that for a while and didn't know where the hell I was. I eventually made it to a boss, but I didn't know how I got there, and I didn't know how to get back.
Yeah, well, that's the other thing. I mean, in the manual, it gives you your objective, which is like get to the boss, beat the boss, whatever, and then get out. But like even the beginning of the stage is just like you just get to a spot and it's like, all right, you won. It's not even like a door you have to get out. You're just like, oh, that's the spot. There's nothing marking it or anything. Like I guess you have to remember exactly the spot you started in, but like they're big stages, so it's like it just the whole thing feels aimless.
I'm thinking about another team-based game we had, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and not that we were like fond of that game, or maybe we weren't as harsh as people might have expected us to be. But that game kind of made the Turtles feel at least a little bit different with the way that their weapons were, and you live swap them as opposed to like being forced to like drag Donatello through the stage. You could just choose to be like, now I'm going to be Donatello, or now I'm going to be Raphael. And mostly that was just to manage your health and make sure you like, continued on. But, that's a game where too, there's like the idea of just going across a level to level and finding the end point, but it didn't feel as obtuse as this. And I don't know if that's because that game was a side-scrolling platformer where things were maybe laid out a little clearer or more what we're used to, and this top-down thing, specifically in like that space level. I don't even know if it's space or not, but
I think the difference between this game and that game, like despite the most obvious things of like, yeah, it's a side scroller, things are a little bit more clear with that, and it was less of a hassle that you didn't have to deal with a dumbass AI companion. I think what was different with the Ninja Turtles was it had an idea of visual language, and you kind of knew like what was a hazard, where you were supposed to go, what was walkable and what wasn't.
Right. This space level that I was talking about, I guess it's like a ship that you're on. It's very unclear like what's walkable, because some things are like transparent, other things, yeah, like even what's a door and what's not is weird in this one, because there's like blue circles and red circles and squares, and like those things are the doors. I'm like, what?
This is almost like a not an MC Escher. It feels like a collage of like mismatched patterns that like it has an idea of, oh, this one's always going to be the floor and this one's always going to be the wall, but like either whatever the difference is in the actual programming of the game of like, oh, this is like the nav mesh and this is the art for it, like they were misaligned or something.
What it feels like to me, to be honest, is that like you have glitched out of a like 2D, like a game like this, but like and you glitch out of like a Final Fantasy game or like a Pokemon game, you get to like a glitch city or something, and it's just like, oh, the textures and tiles are all over the place that like exist in the code, but they were not placed here by humans.
Yeah.
According to the back of the box, and I read this, it's up to you to defeat Magneto. But of course, that's if you can ever find him. The game only gives you the 5 stages, and it's not as simple as beating all 5 stages like you would in, say, Mega Man, and then, Dr. Wily reveals himself, now Dr. Magneto reveals himself. That's not what happens here. Instead, you're supposed to put together that at the end of each of these stages, the like congratulations thing that you receive at the end of each stage is giving you like bits and pieces of a code that when you put those code words together across the 5 levels, you would then realize like, oh, I need to look at the box of my game, like the box I bought with this game, which has the remaining pieces of the code, and then you put the code together for that and input that into the menu screen, and that's how you unlock the Magneto level. Are they asking way too much?
There were clues on the box?
On the box, sorry, not on the box, on the cartridge, right?
Oh.
Yeah, it's on the cartridge, I believe. And it tells you the code that you get through the game tells you to like look at the now I can't remember if it's the cartridge or the box. You got me questioning.
But wait a minute, the code, how do you get this code?
It's code words that are on at the end of each level. So say you beat the Scarlet Witch. Not Scarlet Witch, the White Queen. Say you beat the White Queen level, there's a message there, and then there's code words in that message. So you just take those pieces of that code word.
No, this is too much. There's no way that anyone like is either going to. I mean, yeah, people could probably sink some hours into this game if they really had nothing better to do. But the lateral thinking that you need to have like to figure this out is too much without a guide or like just something in the manual. Or why even have it locked behind a code? I don't know.
I mean, if it's like, I mean, I can understand the attraction to doing something like that, like oh, this is so cool and unique and interesting because it like brings in something physically in the real world and whatever. But like, it doesn't really make any like difference in world than just having like, okay, you beat all these bosses, you've unlocked it. Like, I get that they're trying to make it like a puzzle or like something you have to figure out and you'll be satisfied for figuring out, but that's just
because like in the most famous use of this, Metal Gear Solid,
right?
the game literally tells you, look on the back of the box, Snake. Look on the back of the box, or something along those lines. In this, like, is it being clear like that, or is it just words that you're supposed to put together and then maybe figure out it's also on the box? Like, Mike, do you know?
I do. Give me a second, though, because I want to read the exact code, but I do know that it does tell you to look at the cartridge.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
But
Well, that's
I
a
want to
little
have
better.
the
Yeah.
exact code.
Also, I've never played Metal Gear Solid, but yeah, I am aware of that puzzle, and I'm never sure. I mean, you're a fan, Sean. I mean, how is that received?
I mean, it's pretty clear that on the box, it's like a scene that doesn't actually happen in the game, and the screenshot. It's like a screenshot showing parts of the game, and it's just Snake saying Meryl, and you're trying to figure out the frequency for Meryl, and there it is. Once you're like, oh, maybe I should look at the box, then you find it.
Right. But I guess, I mean, how was that received by fans? Like,
A lot of people
Were-
think
were
it's really
people kinda
clever, and they liked it.
yeah. I guess I could see it being clever, but also, I mean, again, Metal Gear Solid is a very story-driven game. I feel like I would just be totally, like, taken out of it. I'd be like, well, yeah, but what's the context within the world of what I'm looking at?
That is true. I guess when I was a young lad, context was the nuance of context wasn't that important to me.
Yeah, fair.
Okay, so it gets crazier than what I was describing.
Great.
Right? Because
Wasn't crazy enough.
what happens in the game, all right, is let's say you beat the Juggernaut, okay? It shows you on the screen in all white text, you managed to break through Juggernaut's screen of defenders by pushing constantly towards your objective. You have beaten the enemy once again. Time to select a new challenge and test your fighting ability. But according to the cutting room floor, certain parts of that text were supposed to be red, and this was the information that I was given, so that's why I didn't realize that it's not
Because I didn't remember
right.
that.
So it's the same text, okay, the same thing I just read to you guys, but instead the red parts, which were the code words, were screen, by pushing, select, end. And if you took all of the hidden messages across Battle Through a Living Starship, the Subterranean Confrontation, all these levels, you would get the last mission can be reached from the mission screen by pushing, select, end. Seek the advice of the L from leader, and then able is spelled A-B-E-L, so that it would be label from two different words, the L in leader and able from another section, able to make it to the final mission. So you have to push select.
I like this more.
You have to push select, and then you go to the cartridge label, and it just says in the bottom right, over by where all the copyright info is, it says plus B plus up together on start.
I kind of like this, actually.
No, this
now
is
that you've
so
described
stupid.
It, and I remember,
This is so.
I remember seeing the red text. I kind of like it in the sense that it's. You would think like, okay, there's something weird here, because I did think that. I also remember noticing that able is spelled wrong.
Yes, able is spelled wrong
because it's trying to make label. I still don't know if I understand why contextually the X-Men are solving this puzzle.
Yeah, like,
and
is there
you
a
have to,
Riddler
like,
equivalent?
That's what bothers me. But like, it's not as ridiculous of an idea that someone would figure this out as I had
They
thought.
should have made it so that you put a magnet up against your television, and that the certain image quality screens would change, and that would cause you to understand what you have to do next.
Yeah,
It would also
context
ruin your TV.
Yeah, but that's fine.
I
they
know
also
that,
sell
but
TVs.
Maybe the listeners don't.
But yeah, context still bothers me, and the fact that you probably just, for most of the rest of history, most people probably won't have the original label. So, I don't know how much of a longevity they thought this game was going to have, but that bothers me. But I want to walk back my initial hate for the idea about at least it being impossible, because I think that this would be something someone could figure out, because they're pretty clearly words that you're meant to look at.
You know what? I'm keeping it, but my reasoning is only Kojima can do it.
I just think it's crazy that it requires how many special enemies, which I didn't even think there were special enemies in the stage. So it's not even something I was actively like keeping track of. But by killing 30 special enemies in a stage, that's what causes the correct text to be displayed red, the keywords.
Okay, well, also I missed that too. That is, I don't like that either.
No, but I'm saying, like, so think about it. You could beat the level and the text would either be all white, or it would be like, oh, because you killed 30 special enemies, something that is like, you know, in Super Mario Brothers, when you land on an even number, that many number of fireworks happen, right? Like, that's something fun and cute and happens right there. The payoff is over. This is something where it's like, well, they never told me, like, in the manual, like, make sure you kill 30 special enemies or anything, or even explained why I was getting red text this time. But then you also have to, like, because these levels aren't in a particular order or whatever, like, because you get to choose, what if you get them in, like, a different order, and then you have to, like, now think about which order they come in to understand the hidden message? This is, I don't think this is smart at all, Joe, but I get what you're saying. It's very innovative.
I mean, look, the reason, the part about this that I agree with you on is, like, I guess more that, like, yeah, I do think that it's just too missable. It's too like, there's nothing telling you that you should be looking for something like that. So if you miss the first two, it's like, what, do you got to play the whole game again to get to that? Like, that's annoying. I guess I'm just saying that I don't think it's as I think as a puzzle, I like it. I don't like the way it's integrated, or it being integrated in this game.
I have a question about something else. It's more so about controlling.
Gosh, I hope we can answer it. We had a hard enough time getting through this Magneto thing.
I feel like we've settled that, right?
Yeah.
What is jumping for?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I thought that, like, when I was Storm and I was flying around, that I was gonna be, like, able to dodge enemies and stuff like that, but you can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
I feel like you go a little faster when you're flying.
But, like, okay, but there's still a jump button for those that can't fly. I just want to know, like, is there a point? Is it just so that they could use another animation frame?
Sean, it's a video game. You jump in video games. It's just the way it's done.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, there's no actual utility in jumping, but you have to have a jump button.
How often do you jump in real life?
I'm not
Doesn't mean you can't.
This is true.
But, you know, in a platforming game or a side-scrolling action game like TMNT, you jump an awful lot because that's the way that the stages are designed. Right. These stages are not designed for jumping, so, you know, like, the only thing they would be useful for is for dodging enemies or jumping over enemies in that regard, I guess. But, again, I don't know why you would have to do that.
Right. I thought at one point that, like, no matter who you were when you jump, you got, like, a boost of speed, so I tried to jump through some of those aforementioned, like, doors that were closing quickly that you had to get through, but I don't think that really made a difference either. So
I just can't believe that, like, just closing doors is one of the defining features of this game. Like, there's just doors that close.
I feel like that's probably the thing that will kill you the most.
Yeah. And because I feel like this game doesn't have any iframes. It's just, if you make contact with a thing that deals damage, it will just continue to deal damage until you blow up.
But that is something else. That leads me to something else that I wanted to talk about. How do you know that even? Your health isn't on screen. You have to pause the game to check your health.
And that's crazy.
Which, like, fine, not the end of the world, but this is, like, it seems like this is better played as a two-player game, which I didn't do, but if you play this as two-player, are you just constantly both pausing it in the middle of the action? Like, without, you know, you gotta, like, I'm gonna pause it now, like, hold on, all right, I'm gonna unpause it now. Like, it's just weird. And you can't tell if you're about to die unless you pause it. You're just constantly pausing and unpausing.
Bizarre.
Was there anything that we loved about this game? Special shout-outs to the sprites, maybe?
Everything's
the portrait
ugly.
sprites?
Everything's so ugly. No, those are ugly too,
yeah,
man.
Wolverine's
like,
cross-eyed.
Everyone, it looks like everyone got slammed and they all got mug shots, and they were still plastered at the at the police station, and this is them. This is the lowest point of these superheroes' lives. And that's
this is like the scene in Guardians of the Galaxy where they're all getting like
yes,
cooked.
It's that.
I also thought the sprites, for some reason, the sprites were reminding me so much of a long forgotten NES game, Muscle, or M.U.S.C.L.E, whatever we call it.
Yeah, there's a putty like texture to all of the characters that Muscle kind of had.
And yeah, they're all kind of like squat and like they're all, and there's I haven't played Muscle in a very long time, but I do vaguely remember feeling like the power sets of those, or the ability sets, like didn't feel different or unique enough, and I felt maybe that's also why I was thinking of it with X-Men, Uncanny X-Men.
So it's not beautiful, it's not that fun, it's a little confusing how to beat the game. Any points about the music?
It kind of sounded like digitized nails on a chalkboard.
Yep, that sounds about right. So what's the future of X-Men look like on this console? Let's take it to the sequels and spin-off section, and let's talk about Wolverine, but let's talk about it in like 200 episodes when we get there, because that's coming to the NES in 1991, and it's not another top-down game as Wolverine. This is a side-scrolling action game, so we got a chance for some of our notes to be addressed. That said, I don't think this game sucks because it's top-down, right? It's just that
Oh, I agree.
Yeah, it just sucks because there's you not really feel like you're playing as the X-Men. I feel like I'm playing as 4 or 5 video game sprites.
Yeah, what we wanted to happen, or like things that we were talking about with like TMNT that like we thought that I did more right than this, like could have been accomplished in a top-down setting. Could have been done like this, where it's like there's a sense of place and your characters have slight differences to them, and you're not stuck waiting for an AI character and all that stuff. Like, it's not like that's all like byproducts of it being top down. So yeah, I don't even want to give it that like that out.
No, that's not an excuse. Not an excuse for this game.
But if you really want to feel like you're the X-Men and you're the X-Men as a team, obviously you would want to play the X-Men arcade game that came out in I believe it was 92. And that's the one where you can play as many as 6 people can be the X-Men all at once. And this is like right up there with the Simpsons arcade game. They're both made by Konami. Konami just makes great games back then. But then you also have, what else? X-Men Legends, right? Was that game that was on like the GameCube PS2 era that has like a bunch of X-Men. So yeah, you can't play like 6 people at once, but you can be all the X-Men and stuff like that and run around and do all sorts of cool shit in that game. I'm sure there's like many other Wolverine games. There's that X-Men, what's that? The one for Genesis that's really popular. Oh, X-Men 2 Clone Wars. I'm not sure what X-Men 1 was, but X-Men 2 Clone Wars is considered...
It's probably this.
Yeah. Maybe it was this. Sure. No, it looks like it was Children of the Atom, which is a fighting game, though. So, no, that's not true. See, why am I getting led in the wrong direction by Moby Games? Why are they doing that to me?
Shout out to Moby Games.
That is it. X-Men Children of the Atom has an interesting history because that is, like, the one that started the whole, like, X-Men, Street Fighter, Marvel versus Capcom thing.
Oh.
Yeah, so in 1994, X-Men Children of the Atom was made by Capcom, and then the success of that fighting game would go on to them lead to X-Men versus Street Fighter. And then they were like, wait, why are we just doing 2 games? Why don't we do Marvel versus Capcom? And so that's how that whole like thing kind of evolved. And then Marvel versus Capcom Infinite, I think, was the one that like killed the franchise. So hopefully it comes back eventually, but We don't have it as of right now. There are 52 X-Men games, though, so I can't just, like, do it.
Just keep going,
I can't
Mike.
do a true sequels and spin-off section, right?
I would have thought that you would have kept it to, like, Uncanny X-Men 2 on the NES that will play in 3 weeks or something.
Right.
Can you imagine it only came out, like, it's only the third next game that came out after this one?
Yeah, only one other X-Men game that we're playing on the NES, and that's Wolverine. Otherwise, a lot of the X-Men movies wind up becoming games based off of the movies, which I think is interesting, too. Like X-Men, the official game, X-Men Last Stand, X-Men Origins Wolverine. That was, I guess, a time when they were just making every movie was getting a video game.
Yeah, I feel like the whole Fox X-Men run was, the movie run was, like, right in that time where everything got a game. I mean, like, Series of Unfortunate Events had a video game.
This just in, the X-Men Legends games that I was raving about earlier, they got Engage.
It's just in.
They got Engage versions. Can you imagine that? Like, that's a really...
We should play that.
That's interesting because you can't have the same graphics that you have on PS2. You have to completely rebuild that game with, like, sprites.
They probably hired some really cheap studio out of some Eastern European country to put it together, and they were never heard from again.
Yeah, it was developed by Barking Lizards, so you're probably right. never heard of them. Anyway, something you guys have all heard of, and you're probably sick and tired of hearing it by now, but even if we didn't hide it this episode, we have to do the Essential Games List. Sean, your vote for the Uncanny X-Men.
Yeah, there really are no bright spots. There's no redeeming factors. This is just a terrible game that doesn't live up to its namesake. Even though I have no real reference except for some movies in the past 15, 20 years. So, yeah, it's just really bad, not essential.
This is a very simple and repetitive game, but it's not even easy. Like, it's a pretty tough game, you know? Like, you gotta really, like, slog through it. You gotta have high willpower stats of your own to really, like, want to play through this game. I don't feel like I'm the X-Men while playing this game, which is the bare minimum they should have hoped to accomplish when making... When you make any kind of intellectual property, you at least want to make it feel like you're engaging as those characters. You couldn't tell me Wolverine was in this game other than that cross-eyed portrait. So no, not essential.
He was drunk. He made some mistakes, Mike.
I'm actually going to bounce off what you said there a little bit too, because my biggest thought, like I said, I'm not super familiar with X-Men, but the one thing I know about it is that they all have very unique and interesting powers. And I think like the biggest crime you could commit when making an X-Men game is making it feel like you couldn't tell if you were playing as Wolverine, or you couldn't tell if you were playing as Iceman. Like, they're all so unique. You have such a large pool of characters to pull from. I mean, it's weird to me that like everybody felt so bland and like samey. And that's just my like major like first thing that jumps out to me flaw. Obviously, there are a lot of other flaws that the levels were kind of an eyesore. I mean, I don't need to rehash it all. Also, not essential. Not essential.
So hopefully this Black Friday, we helped you save a ton of time by not playing the Uncanny X-Men and instead listening to us. Of course, the savings are always there when you tune into Nostalgia, but technically not with time because it requires time to listen to us. So trust us, the savings are in there somewhere. Joe, where are the savings?
The savings are because normally when you want this information, you want to sit down and watch a video or play a game, you got to sit down and commit to it. You can do this while you're doing the dishes. You're multitasking. You're on a drive. You can listen to this. You're learning our opinions while doing something else rather than having to have a conversation with us.
Yeah, we saved you from the experience of playing Uncanny X-Men unless you chose to listen to this after playing it yourself, in which case we may have like triggered some kind of Vietnam flashback, and we're sorry if we did that, but there are no refunds.
There's no refunds, no coupons accepted either. Don't tweet us coupons.
Yeah. Coupons are very not Cash Money.
This is not a
Very
discount
not-
podcast.
No. We need to get in the black. We need to make profit. You are just consumers. Consume. Uncanny X-Men.
Don't forget, too, that our Patreon subscribers were able to listen to this a whole day early. That's right. They got to listen to this on Thanksgiving while they were sitting with their family at the table. Instead of listening to what's going on in little Billy's life, they got to just turn this on and be like, Alexa, play Nostalgia. And I bet that works. I bet if you ran a plug-in or something, I bet that works. And I bet I just turned on your Alexa by saying Alexa, right, Alexa? But our Patreon subscribers are also going to get a Nostalgia Bites episode very soon, just like they get every month, so you're going to want that too. That is the Just in Time for Christmas Kid Dracula game.
Ooh.
Yep, only came to the
Very
Famicom,
festive.
so yep. The Nightmare Before Christmas, if you would.
Get your eggnog ready, punks.
Right, throw out those leftovers and carol on down to Nostalgia Town.